Hey, everybody, welcome to another NFL wildcard edition of Phil and the Mike. I, as always, am Darren Michael. And with me, the man who just got back from Tampa Bay after consoling Tom Brady and helping him decide what to do, although it seems like nothing has been set yet. Mr. Phil Cleese. Phil, if nothing else, how was the weather in Tampa Bay?
Sunny and sandy, as always. Sunny and
Nice.
sandy.
Nice.
Not a
And
bad day. Not a bad day in Tampa.
how's
TB12, not feeling so happy these days.
yeah. What did he have to? Did he give you any kind of indication as to which way he wants to go? Was he giving you anything?
Oh,
I know you're kind of sworn to secrecy since he is one of your closest
oh,
friends. But still, I mean, give me
I
something.
mean, overwhelming sentiment seemed to be more anger towards Tampa Bay and the Bucks, and specifically Todd Bowles' ineptness. I think I might have heard an ineptness quote. And what do we expect leaving the team to this trash bag who couldn't coach his way out of a wet paper bag with the Jets? And this is how my legacy has to end with him coaching me. And so I don't know. I have a feeling he's going to end up on another team because if you say goodbye to Giselle and family, you would think you do it for more than a 1 year run.
You got
So
nothing else to do. You might
now
as well.
I've heard this debate about old TB12 that, he's washed up. We've heard this many times before.
Yeah.
I don't think it's washed up. The throws he makes to me are very similar to what he's always done. I think what you saw towards the end of the year is a culmination of getting a little bit of happy feet. He got hit a lot more this year. Their
Yeah.
offensive line wasn't very good. And you know what? If I'm 45 years old and have played for that long, I'm probably going to get rid of the ball and not take as many hits towards the end of the year too. I'm a little bit tired of it. He stood in the pot when the game was still in the balance. He stood in the pocket, took hits, but as the game started getting out of hand, you could see he was starting to think about himself in a Raider uniform or himself in a Dolphin uniform or himself in a, I don't know. We'll see where it goes. Could it go full circle and could he end up back with Belichick? I doubt that.
I don't see that happening either. But listen, you would know. I mean, you guys are tight.
Could he put a New York Jets uniform on just to burn Belichick? You know what I mean?
I don't know, man.
I think his two priorities are a team that he thinks can win, in quotations, because win, what does that really mean? And then I think a team that's in warmer weather or a dome. I
Yeah.
think he realizes like what Drew Brees did and a lot of these, guys, like if you could stay in warmer weather or in a dome, you can make the job more enjoyable.
That's
I think
true.
he's done with the Foxborough winners and all that kind of stuff.
Can't blame them there. Nobody likes that. So I wanted
Exactly.
to I wanted to throw something at you really quick before we really get into stuff. And I like to throw certain things out there.
I like to catch him.
Coach Prime.
Prime time. Remember we grew up in the Chris Berman era?
How about
Prime time.
of course. How about the too legit to quit? He and MC Hammer hanging out. But I'm going to ask you a couple quick questions, and I just want you to tell me yes or no, and then I'm going to ask you my real question. Okay.
Okay.
Question number one: would you, if you're a recruit, would you play for Deion Sanders?
Yes.
Okay. Question two: do you think that he's a good coach? Man, that's a long pause.
Yes.
Question three: do you think that he will have success in the Pac-10?
Yes.
Okay. Now, here's my real question. Last year, Colorado was 1-11. Their only win being an overtime win versus Cal. So really, really impressive stuff. Their schedule just came out. All
Okay.
right. Here's five teams that they're playing next year. Four of them are on the road. TCU, Oregon, USC, UCLA, and Utah.
That was five, but okay.
That's what I said. I said five, but four are on the road.
Got it.
Yeah.
Misunderstood you. Apologies.
So knowing that they're basically going to have a whole new team, can this guy actually have a good year one, playing with such huge competition, with no experience playing against huge competition as a coach,
Hmm.
an unknown player? So basically, it's an entirely new team. Is he that good of a coach that he can make this respectable the first year, or is the first year really going to be ugly?
I mean, I would say this about him. there's a lot of shtick and bravado, and he's built up this amazing social media presence, which is
Yep.
obviously attracting all the young kids that want to play for him. Because I'm sure most of them have no idea who Dion Primetime Sanders really is as a football player, but
Yep.
he's now been able to recreate himself in the social media world. I do think he's not a gimmick because
Okay.
he's been able to establish what I look at to know if I think he's more of a gimmick or not is he's brought some really good coaches with him.
Okay.
He got one of the big coordinators on Alabama to come there.
Yep.
He got the Kent State head coach to come there, head coach. So you could say Kent State, but the head coach came there to be a coordinator.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's a big move. I think that's a guy who he's surrounding himself with some really good people. So I like what he's put around him. I
Yeah.
think, you know what, like everything else, it's going to get down to this, the difference of them winning 4 games next year, which I
Yep.
think would still be a big improvement,
Yeah. Oh, huge improvement.
or 7 games next year, dare I say, is going to reside on the shoulders of his son, who he's basically handed the quarterback job to.
Yeah. Yeah.
How
Yeah.
good is he really? If he's really good, they could easily be 7-4 or seven and
That's
five.
the question.
I don't know how good he is because it's hard to tell against who they've played and everything.
I mean,
But
he was a big recruit, and yes, he played against lesser competition. His numbers were just absurd.
yeah,
I mean,
so
he crazy, crazy numbers.
yeah, I mean, do I think Deion Sanders can coach? I think what Deion Sanders can do, I'll do is a different word. I think he can motivate.
Okay. Okay.
I think he can be a big time motivator, and I think he put a lot of good coaches around him. So I think he'll be okay.
Hmm.
Like, I don't think he's drawn up the X's and O's for a critical play offensively or defensively, which he's definitely more, I'm sure he's a natural defensive savant all those
Yeah.
years playing. I'm sure he gets it really well. But
Yep.
I just think he's going to be a heck of a motivator, and he's going to be, you didn't ask me this question. Is he a monster recruiter? Yes. And so the reality of it is if you could be a monster recruiter and surround yourself with enough good coaches, why can't Colorado be good?
Listen,
They can. The Pac-12 is not brutal. It's not like
right.
the most brutal conference.
I didn't ask you about that because I asked you about the first year only.
Yeah,
And
so the
and
difference, it's 4 wins up to 7 wins, depending on the quarterback, because I don't know. So I'll split the difference and say they go 6-6.
you
I'll
got to
say they go
remember
six and six.
with these monster recruits when it comes to football, how often are the monster recruits playing as freshmen? And then if they are, how often are they
Now,
really great?
remember what I told you, though? I said this to you last week. He has a 40-40-20 model.
Yeah.
40 transfers, 40 JUCO, 20% rising freshman,
Yeah.
true freshman. So he's not relying on true freshmen to win. He's
No, no,
relying on
that's what I'm saying.
experienced players to win.
No, that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Okay, fair enough.
6-6. I'll go 6-6. I think
Fair
he
enough.
makes a big impact year one.
I want to um I want to get into a couple NFL things before we touch on the playoffs if we can.
Yeah.
I want you to tell me which team you are most impressed with. Okay, there's three teams that made the biggest leaps this year. All right. The Jaguars went from 3 wins last year to 9 wins this year, so +6. Detroit went from 3 wins to 9 wins, +6, and the Giants went from 4 wins to 9 wins, +5. Which of these teams are you most impressed with this season versus last season? Obviously, they all had great seasons, especially with what they did last year. But which one really sticks out as the best of the three for you?
I mean, so for me, and it hits home. I don't like them, but they're local. I mean, I think what the Giants have done is amazing just because I mean, their over under in Vegas was 5.5, 6 maybe, to start the year. They don't look like they have a great team on paper. And they've been able to beat team after team after team. Going to
Yeah.
Minnesota, yes, we know Kirk Cousins isn't great in the playoffs, but going to Minnesota and shutting down a really good offense in the second half, winning that game, they just seem to do enough. They don't do it and make you like be, overly impressed by them. But when they need a big stand, they get it. When they need a big score, they get it. When they need a big third down conversion, they get it. That's just a winning team.
Yep.
And that's why Brian Dable to me is an overwhelming obvious choice for coach of the year. It's not even close.
Yeah. Yeah. I tend to agree. Now, I also think that most improved player has got to be Trevor Lawrence.
Interesting, right? A first pick in the draft, going from the first pick to the second year being the most improved would seem to like be weird on the surface because you're just expecting him to be good, but he did make a big leap. I could see that. I could see
I
that.
mean, it was a huge leap, and we're going to get into his performance in the playoff game, and I was really really impressed with how he was able to rebound from such an awful start. But we'll get into that. Now I want to talk about. I'm going to pull out some teams that had the biggest decreases, and I want you to tell me which one that you are most disappointed with. All right. I'm going to give you. I'm actually going to give you a few here. Green Bay and the Buccaneers. They both were 13-8 last year. I mean, they both won 13 games, and this year they each won 8, so that's
Mhm.
-5. The Rams were 12-5, -7. Arizona was 11, and they lost 4, so they were -7. And then you got Tennessee, which went from 12 wins to 7 wins. I know that's a lot of teams. Rams, Cardinals, Packers, Buccaneers, Titans. Which one are you most disappointed about?
So let me break it two different ways. The Rams winning a Super Bowl and then just becoming one of the worst teams in football is always a little bit shocking.
Uh-huh.
They were besieged by injuries, but when you sell your soul in terms of draft picks and get very old at a lot of key positions, it's not really stunning when it all breaks down the way it has. So I was stunned, and I'm sure you'll bring this up later. I was stunned McVay's coming back. That's a separate thing. Um, this Overall, though, like the Rams are still going to be stunning because of that. But I think the most overrated 11-win team of all time showed its true colors this year with Arizona. That is
Yeah.
not a good roster. That's not a good team. And Kyler Murray, to me, has anybody fallen more off like falling from grace of being like, well, the look at his history, right? Like it's like how could a 5'8" quarterback get drafted number one or whatever he is, 5'10", and then he comes in the league and he actually brings like a lot of great attributes, and
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
does a good job, and it's like,
Like
wow, maybe this dude's the real deal. And then you start hearing these whispers about how he doesn't read the playbook and he doesn't care. He gets that monster contract, and now he's like he's horrible, and then he
Yep.
gets hurt. Then he gets his coach fired, basically, from what you kind of read between the lines there.
Oh
But I
yeah.
mean, like that franchise in big trouble. I mean, he looks like he's a mess, and
Yep.
they just gave him all franchise massive money. I would actually, those two franchises are in the most trouble because the Rams have no picks, and Arizona might have given franchise money to a quarterback that don't deserve half of it. So, and they're in the same division. So I guess good for Seattle and the Niners. I
You know,
wish the Jets could have a situation with two teams that are just embarrassingly awful for the next 5 years, but we're usually that team in our division.
you said something interesting about Todd McVay. That I think that brings up an interesting conversation. That is, you know, I mean, you're in a situation where you win a Super Bowl and the next season you're just god awful. I mean, do you really fire a guy that's had one bad season after the Super Bowl? I mean, with all the injuries and the bad signings and everything, I mean, yeah, like you said, you basically sold your soul for a Super Bowl.
You
But
did, yeah.
but that's not him. Isn't that the general manager? I mean,
Yeah, I think they gave him a lot of power to be involved. Listen, I always have this joke with family members, right? We always say like, how much would you trade sucking for a decade to win one Super Bowl as a Jet fan, right? And the whole entire family overwhelmingly says they take it to different levels. We would sign up for winning 2 games a year for the next decade to win one Super Bowl because it depends how bad your franchise is. And oh, by the way, if I just played status quo, the Jets win 5 games a year. So what's the difference anyway? So like I understand they sold everything to win a Super Bowl. They got
yep,
there once before, a little
yep.
bit earlier than people thought. Here's Sean McVay's record as a head coach: 60-38 with 2 Super Bowl appearances, 1 win. That guy's got that guy's got any job he wants the moment the Rams get rid of him, if they ever did. I mean, 60-38 with 2 Super Bowls. He's 36 years old, guys. 36 years old. That's
That's
stunning.
impressive. That is.
That's stunning. So he's been in the playoffs 4 out of 6 years. I mean, he's had one bad. By the way, he had one losing year this year. Now, I do think they're in a bit of trouble. I mean, I'm not a bit of trouble. They're in a lot of trouble. I don't know if Matthew Stafford's the same anymore, and I just don't know where they go with no draft picks and very limited roster, right? Like I think that's a legitimate issue. The best thing they have going for them is him, and let's face it, players want to go to LA and play. They have a
Yep.
beautiful new stadium. So they're going to attract people, but they got to be good enough to attract people to take less money. They got to be good enough to make people want to go and deal with the roster. We'll
Yeah.
see where we'll see where it goes. The Niners are sitting pretty though, folks. That's
Oh,
the
the
bottom
Niners are
line.
incredible.
The
But you
Niners
know
are
what?
sitting pretty.
You brought up Matt Stafford, and I want to play off that a little bit. You know, he's he's due for a massive roster bonus. I think it's in a couple weeks, and they announced that they're going to pay him. It's like
They don't
$35
have a
million
choice.
or something, you know, something like that. So at least we know which way they're going. So we'll see. Hopefully they can turn things around. You know, something else that I wanted to talk about this season about. You know, there were four NFL records that were set this season. Did you know that?
Brady set a few of them, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Brady actually set two. Well, so I guess there's five. I kind of coupled his together. He had the most attempts and completions in a season at age 45. I
That
mean,
shows you no running game. Yeah. Yeah.
that just shows you right there. Yeah. So you know you can understand why he doesn't want to be there. So I can't imagine him playing for the Bucs anymore. Pat Mahomes, you know he set a record this year.
Most times,
Now, granted, he had an extra game, so I don't really count it as a record, but it is most
no, I don't know.
most total yards of offense, 5,614, 5,250 passing, 358 rushing, and 6 yards receiving, breaks
Wow.
Drew Brees' record of 5,562 in 2011.
That's wow. Got it. Interesting.
Also, number three, and I'm going to leave the fourth one to last because that's my favorite. This is the first time in history that five first-year coaches on their new team have made it to the playoffs.
5. Wow. I didn't realize it was that many.
That's impressive. Peterson, O'Connell, Dable, Bowles, and McDaniel.
So
First year
that's
coaching
not first
on
year
that team.
a
No,
new team.
that
Got it.
team.
Okay, good.
Right.
Yep.
So first year
Got
on
it.
that team. So they took over, and
Yeah.
some of these guys took over bad teams, you know. So it's not like,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, Peterson did a masterful job down there. And then my favorite NFL record, and I'm going to see if you know this one, right? This record had been intact for 82 years. Finally broken, and actually broken by a considerable amount. Any idea what it was or who it was? I've never even heard of this guy, but
The punter.
the punter is correct. That's right. Ryan Stonehouse from Tennessee. His average on the season,
50.
53.1 yards, breaks the record set in 1940 of 51.4 by Hall of Fame quarterback. Do you know who it is? You're not going to know who it is.
No.
Sammy Baugh, slinging Sammy Baugh of the Washington Redskins.
Wow.
Hall of Fame quarterback.
Interesting.
He actually punted also in 51.4 yards. Isn't that? It's kind of interesting that record took 82 years to break. That's pretty wild. I think that's pretty wild. So I was
That is
excited.
wild. I know. I mean, listen, anything that's 80 plus years, it is. I'm just taking a step back to think what it's like to be able to kick a ball 50 plus yards in the air on average for an entire season. That's pretty amazing.
Well, the one thing that you
Pretty
have to
amazing.
think about is you can't have good field position.
Yeah, I mean, well, it helps to not be consistently trying to pin people inside the 5 or 10,
You
certainly. But you can't shank a punt all year, it feels like. I mean, you don't really,
really
I feel
can't.
like the
You
Jets
gotta have some
punter shanked
bombs.
one every game.
Yeah.
This guy's 50 plus every game. Amazing.
I mean, 53 is
Kudos.
impressive. So anyway,
Kudos.
so let's get into some playoff action. Phil Calise, we refer to you as Playoff Phil. Why don't you tell us how'd you do last week, Phil?
Well, 3-3, but again, against my will, forced to take some games I didn't want to take. So, I kind of look at this. I say, did I have it locked? My best bet. I got on here and I told everybody the Cowboys steamroll the Bucks. Did they not, in fact, steamroll the Bucks? I predicted 28. By the way, I wrote all my scores down. I predicted 28-10. What was the final? 31-14.
31-14. Yeah.
Damn
So
close.
you were off by 1 point. Yeah.
Listen, I think the other thing I take away from this playoffs first round, which overall was excellent.
Yeah.
really exciting first round, right? Like, I mean, the Chargers Jaguars, one of the games of, one of the greatest comebacks of all time.
Yeah.
Niners Seahawks was really close for a half. It got away from Seattle a little bit, but if you're
Well, let's
watching the game, it's an exciting game for a while.
let's just, you know what? Let's get into each game. I want to break down the
All
games
right.
a little bit and get your thoughts on each one. I kind of went by most exciting to least exciting. The Jaguars beat the Chargers 31-30. Okay. Now at one point, the Chargers were up 27-0. Trevor threw 4 picks in the first half. Now,
Yep.
and granted, they scored before halftime, but they come back after giving up 27 points. They outscore the Chargers 31-3. Let me just ask you this, because this is just fascinating to me. All right. Could you imagine, as a quarterback, we've all played sports, right? And you've played competitive sports, I've played competitive sports. When you just have like the first part of the game is just atrocious. Like what does that do to your psyche? And how is it that somebody could bounce back after throwing 4 picks? I mean, yeah, after throwing 4 picks and throw 4 touchdown passes. Like, how is that? I don't even know how that's possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible with a couple. I mean, listen, Trevor Lawrence is clearly mentally tough. That goes without saying.
Clearly,
If anybody doubted it, he clearly showed it. I think it also helps tremendously that he's got a really good, rock solid head coach.
yeah,
That Peterson's a really good head coach, and I think that helps him tremendously when he's down. And I also think, you know, playing at home, that's where being in like a smaller city helps. If that's New York and that's Zach Wilson in his first playoff game, even though he's in the playoffs, he's getting booed absurdly.
yeah, yeah.
If he throws 4 picks in the first round and people just spend $1,200 on a ticket to that game, he's getting booed horrifically. You're
Yep, yep.
paying 200 in Jacksonville to watch the game, and Trevor Lawrence is somebody who, Jacksonville fans and a lot of these smaller markets, they got their guys back. They're just going to cheer for their guy. That's where playing in New York's a different animal. So I think it helps the fan base he's got. I think a lot of things come together, but I think the biggest thing was ineptness too. Not the biggest, but one of the biggest things in that game was the ineptness, and it got the OC fired.
Oh yeah,
They
oh yeah,
they called a horrible game. They're
yeah.
up all those points. They're still throwing the ball. Justin Herbert's throwing it like they're down 20, incomplete passes, stopping the clock, too much time, leaving way too much time. Just a bad job. And, the perfect storm of a comeback, a bad job, a missed field goal, a couple things happen. But yeah, I mean, this is not San Diego's first rodeo to blow in a game either. Los Angeles, I should say. But yeah, bad job, but great job by Trevor Lawrence. And it makes them oddly dangerous for this Saturday.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, when you say the definition of playing with house money, that old term, that old favorite gambling term, that's the Jaguars this week.
Oh
In
yeah.
Kansas City, they're just playing with house money.
Yeah, yeah.
And he got his 4 picks out of the way. So, like, he's going to go there slinging and having fun this week.
I mean, it just goes to show you the Peterson Trevor Lawrence connection. They're looking like they could be dangerous for years to come. I
Yeah.
mean, you got those solid pieces. We know that Peterson is a hell of a coach. I mean, just
And
going there and turning that team around the way that he has been incredible.
I'll throw a question to you.
Uh-huh.
Any chance we're sitting here talking about this comeback if Urban, the legend Meyer, is the head coach?
Well,
How much has his stock been ruined forever
well,
by like you're not going to take anything away what he did as a college coach,
yeah,
but when you so epically fail as that pro, when you try to make the leap, right? Like it's sometimes I like it to sometimes these foreign players come to the U.S. and they're great where they're at, but they still got to come to the U.S. to like test really how good they are, and
yep.
some completely blow it out of the water and do great, and some epically flop. I mean, Urban Meyer had to test. He was, a 3 different school, great head coach, comes to the pros and flops so badly. It's got to be a little tick on his long-term resume. Like his legacy's got to take a little bit of a hit.
Well, the interesting thing is, and if you kind of really think about this, I mean, think about where the head coaches are coming from nowadays, especially the successful ones. You really never see a successful head coach come from college to the NFL. It seems like all of these successful head coaches climb their
Coordinators.
way up.
Yeah.
Yeah, they start off as a quarterbacks coach, then they're an assistant offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator, offense, whatever the case is. and they're under these what they refer to as coaching trees. And it's like that is probably the best way to do it, because if you think about it, the college game and the NFL game are so different that maybe
I'm gonna
that's
butcher this.
life.
Yeah, I'm gonna butcher this in real time, but I could just rattle off tons of failed college coaches that came to the pros. The best example of a very veteran college coach who did well in the pros also had a stint in the pros before, so it's almost unfair, is like a Pete Carroll. But he
Yeah.
was already at HC in the pros, went to USC, built a dynasty, goes to Seattle and does a really good job. But it's rare. I mean, the Cardinals just fired Cliff Kingsbury. The Panthers fired the guy they wanted to get, Matt Rule from Baylor. Obviously, Urban Meyer flopped horrifically. Remember the Chip Kelly era?
Chip
The run
Kelly.
and gun, you can't stop that thing. Yep, the NFL stopped it real quick.
What about
Oh,
Steve
by
Kerr?
the way,
Kerr?
Nick Saban didn't work in the pros.
And the funny thing about Nick Saban is he I don't know if he coached in college first, because I think he coached in college, then he went to the pros,
I
and then
think
he
so,
went
yeah.
back to college.
Yeah, I
Yes,
think he did a Pete Carroll, but he didn't have any success in the
and
pros.
he may go down as one of the greatest college football coaches ever. So
Of course, he is.
I
Yeah.
mean, what does that tell you right there? If one of the
It's a
greatest
different
college
animal.
coaches, it's completely
It's
different, completely
it's a
different.
different animal. When you're now maybe if we project ahead a decade or so, since we're paying these college guys like pro athletes, it'll be
Yeah,
a similar job. But historically, I think the biggest difference is when you look at that group and you have your little shtick and your little spiel as a college coach, it works, or it can work, because you're constantly changing parts.
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
these kids are graduate, you're mostly getting the upperclassmen a couple years and they're gone, and you get a new group and whatever. But in the pros, like, you got to have long-term buy-in. Some of these guys are getting 5 and 6 year contracts,
yeah.
and they're making way more money than you. And it's like, you better know what you're doing and be buttoned up. And like, it's just a different animal, man. Like, it just is. It just is. And finding a guy who's going to be a great head coach is like finding a kid in high school who's going to be a great NFL quarterback. You have no clue.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
just have no clue. Past success in college means nothing to the pros. Past success in college for the
True.
quarterbacks mean nothing to the pros. Like,
True.
those two things are so similar. Head coach and quarterback,
Yeah.
you can find a good one from anywhere, and
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
find a bad one from the best places in the world. You'd think you'd get a
True.
good one.
It's
So
true. You just
it's
never know.
crazy.
You just never know. And the last thing that I wanted to say about that game was, you heard about the man that bet $1.4 million
Yeah, to win 12K or something.
to win. It was the Chargers were up 27-0, and he put $1.4 million on the Chargers to win. And it was 1.4 million to win 11,200, and the guy lost.
What?
I mean, why would you bet 1.4 million to win
If
11,000?
if he came out and said I was super drunk and I
All his
misread the thing.
buddies. Listen, I hope to God this guy is like a gazillionaire. I hope he didn't sink all his money into it for $11,000, although that would be really funny. All right, let's move on. Let's move on. Game 2. Cincinnati beats the Ravens in a game that was much closer, I think, than everybody had initially thought it was going to be, even though it was a 7-point game, but it was a close game.
No, it was super close. Yeah.
Cincinnati ended up winning on it wasn't last minute or anything, but the winning touchdown was a 98-yard fumble return. It was the only score in the fourth quarter by a guy named Sam Hubbard. And this was really interesting because I'm looking at this game and I'm thinking, all right, you got Joe Burrow on one side, you've got I don't even know who's the quarterback on the other side. I can't remember what his name is.
Huntley.
Huntley. That's right. You got Huntley on the other side, right? So you think, okay, this is a huge mismatch. And in the end, neither of the quarterbacks really played well. Burrow did not put up Burrow-esque numbers. But the interesting stat that I looked at was the Ravens rushed for 155 yards and Cincinnati rushed for 51 yards. So what I want to ask you is, since we listen, everybody in the world picked Cincinnati, we were all right. But you and I agreed that they were gonna beat the Ravens and cover the spread, and they didn't. The spread was 9.5. So
Yep.
in your opinion, I want to know what happened, and do you think that tells us something about Cincinnati moving forward?
I don't know if it tells me a ton about Cincinnati moving forward. I think anytime, and the playoffs presented this unique season, and maybe this will happen more often with 7 teams per, but
Yeah,
there was a lot of division playoff matchups.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
just think division playoff matchups are a little bit of a different animal because it's a third game against the same team. In the case of Baltimore, Cincinnati, they literally played the week before, which that's a whole different level.
Yep.
And Cincinnati had to play the game to win because they had to win home field and they had to win the division because of all the screwy tiebreakers with the game that they didn't play. So they had to play that game. So Baltimore, listen, the game could have been a blowout, but they're playing each other twice in 6 days. That already is a difficult world.
That's
So
true.
I think Burrow didn't play bad. You look at his stats. What you come away looking at is saying Cincinnati couldn't run the ball for beans, like 18 for 51. They didn't run the ball. So if there's a roadmap for the Buffalo Bills, this isn't rocket science. Obviously, stop the run, turn
Yep.
anybody into one dimensional. It certainly helps. And
Yep.
I
Yep.
think the Ravens just played a really good game. And oh, by the way, they're sitting on the doorstep. If the quarterback stupidly doesn't try to jump over the top from the 2 yard line and have the ball punched out, you can only do that from like the 1 or inside the 1. He tried
Yep.
to do it from the 2. It did cost them the game because if they score a
Yep.
touchdown there, they're up a touchdown with 10 minutes to go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they
That's true.
very well might have sent Cincinnati home.
That's true.
And also, you know what? Here's another thing. Cincinnati, for the first time, are the hunted.
Yeah.
Last year they got to be the hunter. They got to be the hunters. They got to be the team nobody, they're the Bengals, the Bungles, as they've been affectionately known for, I don't know, a half a century. And they got hot in the playoffs and they were the hunter. This year they're the hunted. It's a whole different world.
It's true.
Joe Burrow's seeing a little bit like what Josh Allen now deals with. And oh, by the way, now they get to face off. Awesome matchup coming up.
Yeah, yeah. So
Awesome.
it'll be interesting. Let's move on to game three, and this might have been the actual biggest surprise game of the week, and that is the Bills beating the Dolphins 34-31. Now, when you look at this thing on paper, and this is, I didn't watch this game, but I'm looking at this. I'm trying to figure out exactly what happened. I think you got exactly what you thought you were going to get out of Skylar Thompson, right? 18 for 45. So you got your Tim Tebow stats, 220 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. And then you look on the conversely, you got Josh Allen, 23 for 39, 352 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. How was this game so close? I mean, this was the game that everybody thought, okay, third string quarterback coming from warm weather to cold weather, Buffalo playing at home. They are, they've got to show people that they are really the top team in the AFC. And then they do this, and this is, to me, they put up a stinker here. And offensively, I mean, I can't say anything bad. I mean, they scored 34 points, but what happened in this game that made this game so close? And I realized that the Dolphins scored, they were down by 10. They scored a later touchdown. Okay, so that we'll preface that out there. But at the end of the day, it was still a 3-point game. How were the Dolphins? Their stats were not any good. They also had 42 yards rushing only. How did they stay in this game? That's really what I want to understand.
So funny enough, there's only 2 games I really watched the full game. This
Yeah.
is one of them.
Okay.
And I watched the Giant Viking game. Those are the 2 games I could speak most on because I saw the entire game.
Yeah.
The stat lines for this game and the way this game played out, it was so bizarre. But I actually have to say, Skylar Thompson's stat line is very misleading. He actually played a way better game than his stats
Okay.
indicate. Early in this game, Jalen Waddle dropped a 60-yard bomb that would have been a touchdown, just dropped it right in his hands, and he flat dropped it. On a big third down when the game was early, Tyreek Hill dropped a slant that might have went 75 for a touchdown because he beat a guy off the line and there was no safety coverage, and the dude just dropped the ball. So early in this game, Skylar Thompson's numbers should have been much better. Then as the game wore on, he did make some mistakes. He obviously threw a couple picks, whatever. He was trying to make a comeback. Like he made some mistakes, but he actually played better than his numbers would indicate. Josh Allen, and when you say how is the game this close, Josh Allen was a tale of 2 Josh Allens depending on the series.
Okay.
He made some of the greatest throws you'll ever see, and he had 3 turnovers and was sacked 7 times.
Wow.
Josh Allen had when he was bad,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
real bad. And again, division rivalry, third time playing each other. The Dolphins got a little creative and did some things that the Bills couldn't block them. Obviously, Josh Allen got sacked 7 times. They had trouble blocking. Chubb was a beast for the Dolphins. Even when he wasn't sacking Allen, he was wreaking havoc around the end, making him get rid of the ball faster than he wanted to. He had a good game. I mean, they had 7 sacks. There's a lot of guys who had a good game. It was just an interesting game. But I think, when you make big turnovers, and you get sacked 7 times, you're probably not going to blow the team out. I mean,
Mm.
that's a lot to overcome themselves. So interesting game, but a fun game. I mean, a real fun game. And
Oh
by
yeah,
the way, the Dolphins were in that game till the end. The Dolphins got the ball back a few times late in the game with a chance to win. So it
yeah,
wasn't like they scored late and it was like a make up, backdoor cover. They
yeah, yeah,
scored
yeah,
they
yeah.
scored later, but they also had the ball with a chance to tie or win the game a couple times late. I mean, just a crazy game,
Yeah.
crazy division game.
It's unbelievable. It makes me it's always interesting to see how these teams play in the first round and see if they can make the appropriate adjustments, especially when they're playing usually a better
Yeah.
team, obviously in the second round. So all right, so number 4, let's move on to the next game. New York Giants 34, Minnesota, 31, Minnesota 24. And this might have been the most impressive victory. Here's my question to you. This is really interesting. You mentioned that this you think that the coach deserves the coach of the year after taking him from 4 wins to 9 wins and a playoff win, which is impressive. But the big question, I know we ask this question every year, and the answer is always the same thing. Is Kirk Cousins ever going to win a big game? I mean, he is Mr. Regular season football. He is definitely, your playoff Phil, he is definitely no show in the playoff Kirk.
Yeah, I mean there's limitations to his game that seem to get exposed a couple of times a year during the regular season and
Yeah.
certainly seem to get exposed in the playoffs. He's not he doesn't have the greatest arm strength. There's certain things he does that he seems like mentally soft just
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
me. He
Yeah.
seems like a guy who wilts. And no more microcosm of Kirk Cousins' career than 4th and 8 against the Giants at the end of the game, and he throws a 3-yard pass that ends up 5 yards short of the sticks. Like where the tight end had no chance to get a first down. Like it's like a rookie would do that, right? Where you scratch your head and go, how do you not throw the ball down the field? It's 4th and 8, the game's on the line, and he throws a 3-yard dump off pass. That's Kirk Cousins. Yeah, listen, I did watch this is the other game I watched. Most of the game. Um, Giants ran the ball when they had to. Daniel Jones was as perfect of a performance as he could possibly have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and the Giants aren't a great team, and they went into Minnesota. It's still a 13-win team, and they beat them. And it was maybe the best performance of the weekend, but it was also like very predictable. I mean,
Yeah.
they were only 3-point underdogs. None of it was shocking. And Daniel Jones runs for 78, throws for 301. I mean, he had a monster game. And
Yeah. Yeah.
if anybody was unsure about paying him this offseason, he's going to get paid now.
There it
I
is.
don't
Yeah.
know what he's going to get paid, but when I made the joke weeks ago, he's going to get 30, 35 million a year. People laughed at me. Well, if Mahomes gets 50, he's going to get 35, guys.
Yeah. Yeah. He is.
He's the quarterback of the New York Giants. He won a playoff game. He was great in the playoff game. He's going to get 30 to 35 million a year. You can laugh about that all you want. That's what he's getting.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
No, listen, it makes sense. It makes sense.
and I
Good.
do think, and we'll talk about this in a minute, I think they're dangerous against the Eagles this week.
Yeah. 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 Definitely. I agree. I agree. Game number 5, Dallas. This was your best bet, your pick of the week. You covered this one easily. 31, Tampa Bay 14. So there's 3 things that I want to mention here. One, the thing that everybody talks about this game is that the Dallas kicker Brett Mayer missed 4 straight extra points. I mean, come on. I mean, these are chip shots. I mean, you miss one here and there, but 4 in a row during a playoff game. Come on. So that was one. And then quietly, Dak scored 5 touchdowns in that game. I think 4 passing and 1 rushing. And Tom Brady, I think that his team is making him look old. I know we kind of discussed that a little bit earlier. He still has skills, he still has game, but when you have no running game and you're throwing the ball away, and he just looks old in this game. So what were your thoughts on this game? And do you think that it made sense that Dallas brought in another kicker this week? They signed another kicker. God forbid this happens again.
I mean, listen, Jerry Jones sitting in his box almost had 3 heart attacks in that game when he kept shanking kicks. So I could see bringing another kicker just as an in case. I mean, the guy got the yips at the wrong time because he's a good kicker. But if 3 minutes into the game in San Francisco, he shanks a field goal left, I mean, I think you got to pull him. I mean,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you're not going to watch him do it again, are you? Because they won't be able to overcome it this time. They blew out Tampa. So it was kind of like a ho hum situation. I think this was such a predictable game because I think people just lost sight of Tampa was an awful team all year. They
yeah,
were
yeah,
just an awful team. They were 8-9 guys. They were horrible. And they were life or death to beat Sam Darnold and the Panthers to win the division a few weeks ago. Whereas the Cowboys seem to like it's the perfect thing for the Cowboys. They won 12 games
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they were treated like a very mediocre team because Dak had a really bad last game of the year. They played a really, and I said to you, it might be the best thing that could happen to them
yeah,
because
yeah,
now it made everybody get off the Dallas bandwagon. Whoever was going to be on it didn't want to get on it. And everybody was nervous about it. Like, oh my gosh, how could they lay that egg in Washington? But it was just a bad game. And sometimes you just have a bad game and you kind of, reset yourself.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
They're much the better team. And I think they are the second most talented team in the playoffs left. I didn't say NFC. I said playoffs. I think they're the
Wow,
second most talented team in the playoffs.
wow.
And I think because they do everything, they
Yeah,
have everything. They
yeah,
really do. They have everything. If Dak plays well, he's the guy that you're always a little uncertain about.
yeah,
But when
yeah.
he plays well, the receivers are really good. They still got really good backs. They got a
Sure.
stud edge rusher. They do everything well. Like there's no reason like they can't make a deep run. It's just they haven't lately. They've had a bad stigma in the playoffs, but I think they got all the pieces to be dangerous, and I think they're a major, major problem for the Niners coming up. So I,
Yeah.
I think it was very predictable, and I think Tom Brady, 35 of 66. It's just so funny that that's his stat line.
I know,
66
right?
passes. Jeez.
That's
Poor
ridiculous.
guy got to ice his arm for 2 weeks after that.
I know. He can't lift his arm after that. So it was interesting, but like you said, it was pretty predictable. And then the last game of that we want to talk about, San Francisco beat Seattle 41-23. We all saw that coming, but to be honest with you, Seattle was up 17-16 at the half.
Mm-hmm.
And they ended up coming out scoring 25 straight, and then Seattle ended up scoring a touchdown with a minute 48 left. So it wasn't even as close as it seemed. But let's talk about Brock Purdy for a second, right?
Purdy.
18 for 30, 332 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and a rushing touchdown. This guy has won what, 11 straight games? The I think he's won 7 straight. The 49ers have
No,
won.
no, yeah, he's won 6 or 7. Yeah.
Yeah, the 49ers have won 11. This guy, we keep saying, oh, you know what, he's Mr. Irrelevant. He's the seventh round pick, whatever, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
This guy might actually he's actually starting to look like he's actually a pretty good quarterback. I mean, does this guy have a legitimate chance, one, to go all the way, but two, even if they lose this week, if you're the 49ers, are you moving forward with him next year? I mean,
What an interesting question that I'm
right?
sure they're going to park for another day. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you got to spend a lot of time on this game. It was really close. I mean, as you mentioned, so the final score is a bit deceiving in that, it was a 17-16 game, and I'm sure nobody would think that when you just see the final score. But yeah, the Niners dominated the second half. Brock Purdy played a great second half. The
Yeah,
greatest thing you could take out of it, and I'm gonna probably be a skeptic of him and the chances of them advancing every week, and they might get to the Super Bowl with me shaking my head going, I was wrong. I'm
yeah,
sure that could be the case.
yeah,
But
yeah,
the best thing you take out of Brock Purdy isn't the stat line. To me, the best thing you take out of him is it is 17-16 at half. They got a ton of pressure on them in that locker room, and he comes out and plays great. That's the best thing because he could have wilted in that second half. Seattle took the lead. And he comes out and plays like a monster in the second half and helped with McCaffrey had a big game and they have a great supporting cast,
yeah,
obviously.
yeah.
Great defense, whatever. But yeah, I mean, that's what you take out of it positively. Amazing. And to answer the question, what do you do even if you get bounced next round? I think you consider everything. I think the only thing that's for sure is Jimmy G, who once may have been brought back, is totally a forgotten piece now. He is
Yeah.
definitely looking for a new team to play on next year.
Oh
That's
yeah.
the only thing I feel like I could for sure say. But in terms of Trey Lance and Brock Purdy, man, I think you bring them both back and you let them compete for the job at minimum.
I mean, if nothing else, if you think about it this way, right? Look at how good your team is. If you get Jimmy G off your books, he's making what, 30 some $1 million a year. I mean, you're talking about how much are you spending on those two quarterbacks? Probably less than $10 million. I mean,
Yeah,
think
you
about
can
how much
easily
money.
afford to carry two rookie salary quarterbacks, even one on the high scale because the other's on the very low scale. So you
Yeah,
could do it
yeah,
easily.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
no issue. Yeah.
You're going to end up saving yourself $30 million. I mean, what can you do with those $30 million? Your team is already one of the best teams. What can you add to make your team even better? I mean, it's mind-boggling to think about that, and the Christian McCaffrey trade in the middle of the season. We're all kind of like, well, is he going to stay healthy? Well, you know what? He stayed healthy and he's been damn good for them. So,
Yep. Back in
so
the Bay Area, everything looks to be perfect for the Niners. Everything looks to be perfect. And oh, by the way, are we done? Conclude. We did our 6 games, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's just for me as a 90s kid, right? I'm born in the early 80s, but my football memories begin in the early 90s. It's just cool to see a Cowboy Niner playoff game because
It
it
is.
brings it all the nostalgia back for me. Cowboys Niners, whether it be the Montana Niners, whether it be the Steve Young Niners, whether it be all those great Cowboy teams, it's just cool. And it's a really good matchup. It's not like two teams who
Yeah,
snuck in. You're talking about a
yeah.
13 and a 12-win team, and that's just a cool matchup. Might be my favorite matchup of the playoffs.
Oh
This
yeah,
this
oh
round.
yeah. We're gonna there's some great matchups. I mean, great matchups. We're gonna talk about it in a second. I want you to give out your game ball, and I've got three people that each just did some great stuff. They're all quarterbacks in the sense because there were three quarterbacks I think that just had just unbelievable games. And the first one we just talked about, Brock Purdy, 18 for 30, 332 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, a rushing touchdown in the win versus Seattle. I mean, that was huge the way he came out in the second half. Trevor Wilson. I mean, Trevor Wilson. Trevor Lawrence. 28 for 47, 288, 4 interceptions in the first half, and then he comes back and throws 4 straight touchdowns after that. And then you've got Dak, 25 for 33, 305 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and a rushing touchdown also. So you've got three monster performances. So out of those three performances, who gets your game ball for the week? The playoff wild card game ball.
I mean, listen, you could obviously good job with what you put out there. I'll give it to Purdy because I've been not down on him, but I haven't been giving him his props because I feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. But he gave me at least a chance to be sold on him with the
Yeah.
second half performance.
Yeah.
So I'll give it to Purdy.
Nice. Now
Purdy.
let's get into this week's matchups. And I am super excited because when you look at this, I kind of look at it this way, right? You got 8 teams left, you got 4 games. 3 of the games I feel like are, I don't want to say they're dream matchups, but they are in a sense, with the type of franchises they are, or where they are right now. I mean, just such incredible things. So let's start off with probably what I think is the most exciting game, and that is Dallas at the 49ers. 49ers are favored by 3.5. You've got two really good teams here. And like you said,
I'll
Dallas.
keep you updated. It's the spread's 4 right now.
Oh,
Up
it's
to
up to
date
4.
spread.
Okay.
Yep.
So you've got two great teams. We've seen that the 49ers have won 11 straight games. They are arguably, I mean, the hottest team in the NFL. I mean, you can't really go against that. But Dallas, like you said, I mean, they really don't have any weaknesses. They're putting it all together at the right time. But Dak just had an unbelievable game. So preview this game and tell us which way you think this game is going to go.
It's the so obviously it's the best quarterback of the matchup will be, in Buffalo this weekend. But the best matchup, all parts, is this game in the Bay Area, in San Francisco, between the historic nature of the two teams, the counterbalance of good offenses on both sides with good defenses on both sides, with
Yep.
game wrecking players like Micah Parsons and Joey Bosa on the sides. Um, you really have everything in this matchup. Now, this doesn't have the rivalry feel like it used to,
Yeah,
obviously,
of
right? These
course,
two
of
teams
course.
haven't been consistently good enough nor run into each other, so you're not getting that. But man, this has got such a cool matchup. I could see this game going either way. Um, I really can. I do think when you get the better quarterback, and I'm not trying to be down on Purdy, but Jack is still the better quarterback,
Yeah.
and you get points, I'm going to tend to lean that way because that's still a nice combo to have, better quarterback and getting points in a game. I don't think the home road thing is that big a deal because I have a feeling there'll be 20,000 Cowboy fans in the Bay Area this weekend. I
Always on.
think they'll inundate that area to some degree. So I think it's just a fun game. I think it ends up being like a 27-24 down to the wire great game. I just think it's going to be a great game. I think the Cowboys win at the end of the day, but I just think it's a great game, period. And I think it's the best overall game on all sides of the ball The only thing that worries me is I don't like McCarthy as a head coach for the Cowboys.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
Like, I
nobody.
don't like McCarthy. I'm not a fan. I know he's done a good job overall. I don't love him in the playoffs. I don't love him in big games. But there's just something about the Cowboys this year. I think they're gonna go. I think they're gonna win this game. So
All right. And you know what? And that's a great call. So
it's
you
a
got
great game, though. It's just a great game. I would be stunned. The biggest thing I'd be stunned by is if it's not a great game.
yeah, it should be fun to watch. I kind of look at it this from a different perspective, and I look at the 49ers as, you know, the 11 in a row, hot as can be. Brock Purdy has just been on fire. Dallas is still, I still find them to be up and down, and they still have had some inconsistencies over the season. So, you know, I'm personally going to be pulling for the 49ers, and I think they're going to cover too. I'm just putting it out there.
I
My
understand. I understand both
listen,
of them. All right. So you think they're gonna cover? You think they're gonna win comfortable, or what do you?
I think that they're going to win by a touchdown. I think that San Francisco's defense is just going to overwhelm Dak. I think that the offense they're gonna get the ball out of their hands. They're gonna get the ball out of Purdy's hands fast. They're gonna utilize the run. They're gonna take Micah Parsons out of the game, and that's
Okay.
how they're gonna do it. So we'll see. But listen, you're the one making the picks. So the pick is Dallas +4.
Dallas +4. And I threw a final score out there since it's the
Yeah.
playoffs. I'm doing a wrinkle. I'm going Cowboys 28-24.
I love it. I love it. And then another matchup that, you know, on the surface, maybe at the beginning of the year, you would look at this matchup and you'd be like, this is ridiculous, especially since this was your Super Bowl pick. But you've got the New York Giants playing at Philadelphia. Philadelphia is favored by 7.5. And this one is interesting, obviously, because the Giants have really, really played well this year, and they're coming off a very, very big victory. And you got a Philadelphia team that has been great all season long until Jalen Hurts is out of the game. It turns out he's coming back, but the question is how rusty is he going to be? What's he going to look like? How long is it
Well,
going to take to get comfortable?
yeah. I mean, he played last week, but what you found out last week with Jalen Hurts is, and obviously the game plan was watered down, right? Because they were
Of
going to see
course.
him, they were going to most likely see him again, or there was the potential to see them again. And so I'm sure they didn't show him a ton. I think the Eagles probably looked at the Giant Viking game as a likely chance the Giants would beat them and have to play him again. So,
Yep. Yep.
but they know each other well, right? They play each
Very
other every
well.
year.
Yep. Yep.
Um, I think it gets down to this: Jalen Hurts, if he's not fully mobile and confident to get hit and land on that shoulder, and is more of a pocket passer, I don't like the Eagles' chances in this game because Jalen Hurts needs to be able to move. He needs
Yeah.
to be able to get
Yeah.
out of the pocket. He needs to be able to run for those 10-yard first downs that kill defenses, those 3rd and 10s, he runs for 12. If he can't do that stuff and he's not healthy, and you'll know right away. In that game, the last game of the year when the Eagles were still playing to make sure they held on to the 1 seed, he never took off and ran, and he didn't look good. He's not a great pocket passer, guys. Spoiler alert, he's not. I know he's had a good year when he's healthy, but he ran a lot. That's part of what made him great.
Right.
I'll take the Giants all day, getting 7.5 in this game. Yes, they're my Super Bowl pick, the Eagles, and yes, they still have a good chance to win the game, obviously. But I got this funny feeling the Giants got a little magic left in them, this
Yep.
magic carpet ride. They just see every year there's a team that seems to get the breaks and call the right play at the right time, press all the right buttons. And let's face it, as living in the New York, New Jersey area my entire life, I've watched multiple magic carpet ride runs to the Super Bowl with the Giants. They have a history of being slightly above average, sneaking into the playoffs, and then going on these wild rides. They've done it twice in the two. They've done it with Eli Manning twice,
Yep.
and they
Yep.
won them both times. They didn't just get there; they won them.
That's
I'm not
right.
saying they're going to win the Super Bowl this year because I think the AFC is so much better at the top, but I actually think the Giants pull this game outright
Wow.
and win. And I'm
Wow.
picking the Giants 20. I'm picking the Giants 21-20 outright. And
Wow.
I'm putting my money where my mouth is because I've already bet a money line straight up bet on the Giants. Getting
Wow.
plus 400 on DraftKings. So I'm putting my money where my mouth is.
Nothing wrong with that, man.
Just
Nothing
take
wrong.
a shot. I think they're a live underdog at plus 400.
No, I
And
like
again,
it.
it's a lot about I don't know how healthy Jalen Hurts is. If the Eagles are healthy, Jalen Hurts was not coming off of a bad injury. I probably wouldn't feel the same. So this isn't just a pick on being silly about the Giants are better than they are. I don't think the Giants are this great team. I think the Giants have a really good head coach, who seems to be pushing all the right buttons. They have a quarterback running back combo that's been giving people fits because the RPO game has been killing teams, and Daniel Jones is deceivingly fast and a big boy, and Barkley's back to being Barkley, and they're not an easy combo to stop. And
No, no.
so you watch them and you go, man, on paper, they shouldn't be this good. But then when you watch them, you're like, man, they're hard to stop.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think they could be trouble. And if this game gets late in the game, I think the Eagles are going to feel the pressure in this game.
Yeah, but you know what? You brought up a good point before, and you were talking about how when teams are in the same division, they're playing each other twice. So this is the third time these teams are playing. It's
Yeah.
tough to play 3 games again. I mean, the other team so well. Plus, you're in their same division, so you play them every year anyway. But you look at the Cincinnati Ravens game that was a lot closer than it should have been. You look at the Bills Dolphins game that was a lot closer than it should have been. These are even the San Francisco Seattle. I mean, that was kind of a blowout,
But there's also a common thread. It's not just playing a team 3 times. These teams are all these favorites were trying to beat the team the third time in a row.
That's
That's
right.
not easy to beat a team 3 times.
It's
The
very,
Eagles
very
beat
good.
the Giants twice. The Bills had beat the Dolphins twice. It's not easy to beat a team a third time. Like that's just hard.
It's
So
true. It's true. It's true. So, but it seems like a good call. It's the NFC games. I mean, as much as you think the AFC is so much better than the NFC, these are going to be great games.
yeah,
These
I'm taking the two. I'm taking the two
absolutely great.
I'm taking the two underdogs and the two road teams to win outright. So I might look like a fool next week. We'll see.
Listen, it's good stuff. And then let's move over to the AFC. We've got Cincinnati and Buffalo. Both teams, didn't necessarily look as good as they could have. And I think that these teams are still pissed off about the fact that the NFL never rescheduled their game. And I know
I,
you brought up an interesting point because, and I want you to talk about this a little bit, but we all talk about, oh, it's Buffalo and the Chiefs, and they're going to play it on the road, but nobody really talks about the Bengals. I mean, what are your thoughts on what happened to the Bengals out of this?
the Bengals got the most screwed out of the whole entire deal because nobody even speaks about it. So if you remember back, and thank God, looks like DeMar Hamlin's completely recovering and great. So it's not like we're looking back at a tragedy. We're actually looking back at an amazing bad moment that turned into a great, recovery.
Yeah,
But if you go back to that game, right? Cincinnati on a Monday night has the Bills in town up 7-3. Now that's a game just started. I'm not saying they were winning late in the game
yeah,
or something,
yeah,
but the
yeah.
Bills up 7-3. And if they beat the Bills that day, they're hosting this matchup. And nobody talks about it. So my contention is when the NFL was going through their scenarios of, well, if Kansas City plays Buffalo, we don't know what to do. So they came up with this cockamamie plan to give Kansas City the 1 seed, but the game's in a neutral site and all the rest of it. How was the Bills and Bengals, if they were to play, how
Yeah.
was something not figured out on behalf of the Bengals? Because why does Buffalo automatically host this game? It doesn't make any sense.
It's a great question.
Actually, when they were on the field together, the Bengals were up 7-3 getting the ball back, or with the ball, I should say, because the tackle happened was the Bengals at midfield. That
Yeah,
guy, DeMar Hamlin, was tackling T.
yeah,
Higgins at
yeah.
midfield. So the Bengals had the ball at midfield, up 7-3. How it goes from that to they're at Buffalo this weekend, and nobody's even saying a word about it,
You don't hear
is
a word.
is
Nobody
stunning. It's
anywhere. It's
stunning.
unbelievable.
Why is that game not at a neutral field too? I mean, to use the NFL's logic, if the Chiefs and Bills have to be played at a neutral field, why is Buffalo Cincinnati not being played in Detroit this week or someplace? Let's say it should both be, in a cold weather place. Let them, battle it out. It could play at a MetLife Stadium even. I mean, that kind of favors Buffalo a little bit, but I mean, it's still not in Orchard Park. There's no reason this game should be in Orchard Park. And if you don't think it matters, the spread's up to 5.5.
Yeah.
Vegas certainly thinks it matters. I'm beyond sure the spread wouldn't be anywhere near 5.5 if it was in Cincinnati this week.
Oh no, of course not.
So
Of course.
like it's a big difference. So it's a big deal, and I don't know why it's not been talked about. I
So
really don't.
what do you think is going to happen in this game?
So there's things about Cincinnati I don't particularly love, but there's things about Buffalo. And it wasn't just last week against Miami. Buffalo has had some wacky games and their defense has been run on at times. And there's been some different things about them. Like if you go back to the Viking game when Minnesota went in there and beat them in Buffalo with Kirk Cousins, and we talk about him not being a big player, but they won a game. They struggled with the Jets twice. Um, they've just had some games. They struggled with the Patriots. Oh my goodness, did they struggle with the Patriots when the Patriots almost beat them in Orchard Park the last game of the year? Um, there's just something about Buffalo where their defense isn't as good as I thought it would be. Um, I, for me, I think it just gets down to this. I could definitely find things I don't love about either team. I love these two quarterbacks. They're as gamers as it gets.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I, maybe I'm going to be wrong, but I'm just going to take the 5.5. I, I just think it's a bit too many points. Joe Burrow's as clutch as it gets as well. I do think they'll have some success on offense. I think it'll be a reasonably, surprisingly better defensive game than people think. Like, I don't think you say Burrow, Allen, playoff game, 38-35. I don't think it's going to get in the 30s. I think the game will be played in the 20s. I think both teams will try to possess the ball to keep it out of the other team's hands. I think it'll be like, what did I predict? I think um, I went Buffalo 27-24. I do think Buffalo wins the game. Um, but I don't think it's like as big a shootout as it could be. So I'm going to take Buffalo, but I'm going to take the Bengals with the points.
Okay. Okay. Good call. Good call. It again, three that's three games that should be fantastic games.
Should be.
Plain and
Should be.
simple. This should be one of the best rounds of playoffs. On paper, it looks like it could be one of the best rounds of playoffs that we've seen in a long time. But then we've got our fourth
Could
game
be. Yep.
and the biggest spread. We've got the Jags with their miraculous recovery, their miraculous year from what they did last year, playing the overwhelming favorites coming out of the AFC. I think the Chiefs. Chiefs are favored by unless the line
It's
is spread
9.
by 8 and it's 9 now.
9.
It's even
Yep.
going up. I had it at 8.5 yesterday, so it's at 9. So you've got the arguably the top quarterback in the NFL going against the up and comer that looks like he's going to end up being one of the best, one of the best quarterbacks during his time if he continues to develop the way he is. So what are some keys to this game and what are your thoughts on what's going to happen here?
So this is the game I've had the least feel for, believe it or not, of the
Okay.
4 games. And here's my reasoning. If the Jaguars would have just won a traditional game last week, like a traditional hard fought home game battle, 24-21, just a good ball game, I think I would have really loved the Chiefs this week, like overwhelmingly. And
Yep.
my angle would have been like a team happy to be there versus the team that's, got their eyes on winning a Super Bowl. But because the Jaguars played so bad early and because Trevor Lawrence played so horrifically and
Yep.
found a way to come back, there's this weird feeling where it's like, man, they're playing with house money in a good way, where they may just go there and be a dangerous team and give them all they can handle because they kind of went to the brink, survived it, and now they're just out there, hair on fire, just playing for fun. Um, I go back and forth with this game. In the end, I'm gonna take the Chiefs and lay the 9,
Okay.
but I'm
Wow.
caveating it that I think this could be a way closer than game than people expect.
Yep.
Like, my final prediction is 31-20 Chiefs, so I'm taking them
Okay.
by 11,
Okay.
but I would not be surprised if it's 31-28 and the Chiefs are fending off a last minute field goal attempt to send it to overtime. I wouldn't be. I think Trevor Lawrence could be very dangerous this week. But I'm going
Yep.
to take the Chiefs and lay the 9. So I don't want to be hypocritical. I am going to stick to that, but I really don't have a great feel for this game.
All right. Well, there you have it. Phil's got Dallas +4. He's got New York Giants +7.5. He's got Buffalo. I'm sorry. He's got Cincinnati +5.5, and he's got the Chiefs -9. So, if nothing else, let's just hope that it's as great of a week as it looks like it's set up to be. So I hope everybody enjoys the second week of NFL football. There's a couple more things that I wanted to talk about before we head off. One is Carlos Correa, and I don't think we've really gotten into this,
Did
but
we? I don't know.
if nothing else, he signed a record. He set a record by signing $865 million worth of contracts. Let me ask you this, okay? I know the two teams were scared off because of some sort of leg problem that they think might develop, but they were also offering him 12 and 13 year deals. He ends up signing a 6-year deal with the Twins. I mean, what are you hearing out there from your inside sources? I know you're pretty tight with the owner, Steve Cohen of the Mets. I mean, what are you hearing that these two teams were really scared away, and do you think it's justifiable?
I think everyone should be scared away from giving 12-year contracts out.
Yeah,
So I
well,
think I think they're doing it so tentatively and so against their better judgment that then something arises with an actual previous medical condition, and then it's like, oh, forget it. Like, I think nobody really wants to give these 12 and 13-year deals out, but they're getting caught up in the moment right now where this is what the market is bearing. But like, if you're not going to test well medically, then forget it.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
think that's what happened. And I think, look, at the end of the day, the Mets final offer to him was 6 years, 156. I mean, they cut the thing down right in the middle and cut it in half. And then the Twins come in, sneak in, and give him basically 6 for 200 and beat the bid. And he's already was a Twin last year, so it's like he gets to, he needed a landing spot. I mean, Scott Boras was scratched. Once you fail two doctors fail you on two different teams, you're basically almost damaged goods. The fact that Boras still got him 6 for 200 speaks to how great Boras is. So he got him the 6 for 200. Time will tell. Listen, it's all about a debilitating, degenerative issue that who
yeah.
knows when it pops up.
That's
Maybe he
exactly
gets
right.
through the 6 years and it looks great. Minnesota does a great job. But at the end of the day, like for me, I gave it the F for the night for San Francisco when they made the signing, because I don't think he's a top flight number one player. And then for
No,
the Mets, I gave it like a C plus because I said he'd be a piece of a great team and he wouldn't be asked to be like the man. For the Twins, I give it like a D again. I mean, they're a little bit, maybe got a little bit more talent than San Francisco offensively, but like he didn't do anything for them last year, guys. They were in a
no.
mediocre division and they won like 75 games. So like, okay, great. You brought him back. You gave him 200 million. He didn't make a difference last year for them.
That's exactly
So
right.
he's not the best. He can't be the best player on a top team.
No,
He's a second or a third piece. He's not the main guy. So when you pay a guy to be the main guy and he's not, that's never a great signing to me. The Mets were never paying him to be the main guy. So like they're just throwing money like monopoly money, but they weren't
yeah,
paying him to the main guy. They had Alonso, they had Lindor, they had Nimmo, they had a bunch of other bats, McNeil. Like they were paying him to be the sixth hitter or whatever. So I think he would have
yeah.
done well in New York, but yeah, now nobody will remember again in Minnesota. That's the other part.
That's true. That's true. That's
Now
true.
Carlos Correa becomes a name you forget about in a couple of years.
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen, we'll see what happens. I personally agree with you. I don't think he's very good, but that's just me. I don't know if you knew this. The other day was the international baseball signings where they each team has a big pile of money or whatever. There was a record set. The Padres gave a $5.6 million bonus to a Venezuelan catcher named Ethan Salas, who's 16 years old.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
When did the San Diego Padres hit the Powerball?
that's the real question. Even more so than why did they pay this guy 5.5 million? All of a sudden,
When
they've
did
got
they hit the
more money
Powerball?
than anybody. I
they,
don't know.
they're the only team that has like nothing changed and they just now spend money like they never did. Like the Mets changed ownership. I know why they spend it. They got the richest owner in sports. The
Yep,
Yankees
yep.
are the Yankees. The Dodgers have been the Dodgers. We know why all the teams that spend and don't spend don't spend. When did they didn't change ownership? What changed? Somebody hit Powerball and we're not aware of it.
It must be. I don't know. The $1.2 billion Powerball went to the owner of the Padres. I really don't know.
Like
I
it's like
really
his fun
don't know.
money now. Like when did this happen? I mean, their payroll is creeping up on like absurd payrolls, and they're in on every big free agent, and they're like, oh, Tatis is going to miss 25 games left to start the year. Let's get Bogarts in here to play shortstop at 280 million. Like they don't just get like small moves. They traded for Soto. I mean, my goodness, they're paying Machado 30 plus million.
Yep.
Crazy.
Yeah, yeah. It's
I don't
unbelievable.
know. It's
But
insane.
a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. Yes or no? Sean Payton coaches next year.
Yes.
Okay. Um, this I thought was really interesting. There is a recruit. I don't know if you heard the story. There's a recruit. His name is Jaden Rashada. Rashada is his name. He's a high school quarterback, right? And he chose to go to University of Florida because he was promised a $13
I
million
saw this.
NIL deal. I mean,
This is the new world.
that tells you everything that you need to know. He's a high school quarterback, high school, and and then I guess they pulled the deal, and now he decided he's not signing with Florida. But I mean, there you go. That's the biggest problem right there. Guys are signing for money. You pull the money, now they're going to go looking for the money someplace else.
This is the minors of the NFL now.
It's the most
This is
asinine
not
thing ever.
academic. This is not there's no such thing as a student athlete now. Not
No,
in the
it's a
not
business.
not with the basketball or the football players. They're not student athletes anymore. They
They
we talked about this. The Pandora's box is open. That's it.
it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible.
But
That's
remember, this is like a lot of things, even, and we won't get political here, but this is a lot of the whole like, oh, poor kids, you use their name, image, and likeness, and you don't pay them. And like, how do you, and oh, they deserve to be paid. They just need $50 to buy a movie ticket and take their girlfriend out. Like, you guys, you big bad white people running the college football world, like you're just holding the players down. And then 2 seconds later, it's $13 million NIL deals, because that was the whole point. There was no mechanism to control this from going from give them a couple $100 to here's 13 million.
yeah, it's out of control.
And that's why people needed to stop it and not allow it, because it's like
Yep.
your $250,000 scholarship, that's your money. Use it properly, get a great education, use ball to get your academics. And then if sports don't work out, you got a great education from a reputable school, plus the contacts and the networks you make there. And now you got yourself a shot to have a good career. Instead, it became throw money at the people. And that was just a vicious thing. It was never going to end. It
And
was
that's
never going to end.
let's be honest. What's this kid going to look like, right? He's going to have these huge diamond studs in his ear. He's going to have these massive gold chains. He's going to have a diamond Rolex. He's going to be driving a Bentley or whatever. I mean, this is a 19-year-old.
But by the way,
Come here.
how many kids are going to be so demotivated by a couple $1,000,000? And don't get me wrong, we'd all take a couple $1,000,000, right?
Of
But how
course.
many kids are going to be demotivated where they were on a trajectory to be a great NFL player and make $100 million or $200 million, and they get some money, and now they no longer ever fulfill that destiny because because if you want to, there's 22-year-olds that are in the NFL that lose sight of the prize the first contract they get in the NFL. Imagine an 18-year-old getting some money, and not all of them are getting $1,000,000, folks. A lot of them are getting 100,000, 50,000,
Or less,
200,000,
or nothing.
or
Yeah.
whatever. They're getting just a taste of it, and now they spiral their college career out of control negatively and never actually make any real money, right? Because a couple 100,000, they'll blow that in a year. Like, they're not smart here. These are 18-year-old kids. Somebody's going to go buy a $90,000 car. Well, there goes most of the money already. You know what I mean? Like, it just was so bad for sports. And the transfer portal has become NFL free agency.
That's all it is. Yeah.
Now it's pure NFL free agency. Deion Sanders is buying people for $1,000,000 a day here. He's flipping people in the portal all day long.
Yeah.
So, and he's not the only one. I'm not picking on him.
Oh, yeah. But you're giving a great example there. It's unbelievable. It's disgusting. It really makes college football not as enjoyable. I mean, here's a guy that says, okay, could you imagine he goes to Nick Saban's house, and it's hey, these guys offered me 13 million. What can you do? It's almost like, do you remember the movie Blue Chips with Nick Nolte?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's the
Yeah,
same.
I like that movie. Most people hate it. I like it.
Yeah, it's a great movie where hey, what can you do for me? And all of a sudden they pull up. The mom's got a Lexus. The other mom's got
Yeah.
a new house.
Remember the white guy who didn't ask him, hey, are you Ricky Ray? Here you go.
Here, this is for you. It's just a bag of money. He's like, okay, I didn't even want anything.
All right.
That guy's from Indiana, just to let you know, Matt Nover. And I keep
is he?
getting to him, hoping to get his autograph, and
Nice.
he just doesn't respond.
It's hilarious. Hilarious.
Did you see? There's a couple other things I want to talk about, just because there's some funny things that happened this week. You remember Jared Jeffries, right?
Yeah, Jared Jeffries, Indiana Hoosiers.
Yeah, and he played in the NBA for like
NBA, yeah. 6'11", skinny as a rail.
You hear he was on Price is Right last week?
I did not.
So he got his name called. So he comes down to the front. First off, there were 3 women and him, and the women each come up to his waist, which was funny.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
So he wins the round. He gets to go up on stage, right? And he's playing this game. And what does he do? He wins a new car. And what is it? It's a Toyota Corolla.
He can't fit in a Toyota Corolla.
So it's funny. He was on a podcast a couple of days ago, and they asked him, they said, have you ever been in a Toyota Corolla? And he's like, yeah, once I got picked up in a Toyota Corolla. He goes, I had to get in sideways, and I actually just had to sit sideways. I couldn't even put my legs out. I was sitting sideways because that was the only way I could fit in the car.
That's hilarious.
No, it's funny that he won a Toyota Corolla. I just thought that was hysterical. So he'll probably
really
donate it, or do something with it. I don't know. Or he'll go Bubba Smith from Police Academy style, where he already pulled out the front seat of the. Remember, he pulled out the front seats and he's sitting in the back to drive the car. 2 other things that I wanted to talk about. Do you know who Maya Moore is?
Yeah, she was like one of the best UConn women's basketball players.
Yeah, she was phenomenal. So she actually left the game 4 years ago because there was a guy that was in prison for a crime that he didn't commit, and she spent like 2 years trying to get him out, and she did. Like it's an amazing story. I learned all about it. Amazing story. And since then, they've actually gotten married and they've got this life together. But it's just
Yeah.
unbelievable. So yesterday she actually announced that she's retiring for good. She's 33 years old. She hasn't played in 4 years. But I just wanted to read her resume to you, and then you try to tell me that she's not the best, arguably the best women's basketball player ever. Okay.
Hmm.
She played 8 years in the WNBA. She won 4 championships. She played in 6 All-Star games. She was an All-Star game MVP 3 times. She was a 5-time All WNBA first team, 2-time All WNBA second team, 2-time All Defensive WNBA second team, 2-time NCAA champ, 4-time AP All American first team, Gatorade Player of the Year coming out of high school, 2-time AP Player of the Year, 2-time Wooden Award winner. I mean, it just goes on and on. And she won 2 European championships. Okay. Um, I mean, my God. I mean, if there
She's
is
right there. Yeah.
if there's a Hall of Fame resume, I mean that's it. And the thing is, she's up for the Hall of Fame because she retired 4 years ago. She's going to be up for the Hall of Fame next year, along with our good friend Cappy. So looks like she may get in.
Cappy.
She might be the one that gets in next year and not Cappy. So I'm sorry that you may not get in next year, Cappy. But man, talking about incredible, and I have her
Let's
autograph.
get Cappy in. Hashtag get Cappy in.
Get Cappy, and I know we need to go on a we need to have her back on. Maybe one of these days we'll have her back on and we'll appeal to everybody to get her in the Hall of Fame. Last but not least, you know who Chris Ford is?
Yeah, he owns Ford Explorers.
He
No, I
does
don't know
own.
who's
He
Chris
may
Ford.
have a Ford Sport. He was a former player and coach. He played 10 years in the NBA and he coached for 20 years NBA and college.
Nice.
He's known as the man that hit the first 3-pointer in NBA history. He passed away yesterday of a heart attack. So rest in peace, Chris Ford at age
Nice.
74. Not nice, but
No, nice that he hit the first 3-pointer. Sorry.
yeah. But
Bad timing on my nice.
he's a famous guy. I've gotten his autograph a bunch of times. He's a great signer through the mail. Great guy. So wish he and his family wish his family all the best in their time. So anyway,
I like
uh,
it.
another great episode, my friend. Another wild card episode. I am so pumped about this weekend. I cannot wait to watch these games. And the nice thing is, with the wild cards, you can actually watch every game, which is cool.
Yes.
So what do we got?
Yes.
We got 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday.
2 Saturday, 2 Sunday. 4:30,
Awesome.
8:15 on Saturday, and then 3 and 6:30 on Sunday. Set your
Awesome.
dials. Eastern time.
Awesome.
Sorry for all my California folks.
Awesome. Well, great feedback today, Phil. Great picks as always. And guys, if you're tuning into us, thank you for following us. Hope you enjoyed the episode. And tell your friends, tell your family, tell your neighbors, tell people you like, tell people you don't like, tell everybody. And let's continue to grow this thing and have fun with it. So thanks everybody. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week on Phil and Mike.